There's windows broken out and windows open, and we had locked the house down, so...
Yeah, please don't go in, because we don't know if someone's still in there.
Just 12 minutes after 57-year-old Nedra Lemke made this 911 call, an officer arrived on scene to find her motionless on the ground and unresponsive, so he hustles back to his squad car to call for backup.
.595. Shots fired at the residence! Shots fired! Shots fired!
This cop would then take a handful of dirt and throw it in one direction, and then sprint the opposite way as more bullets started to rain down. Once he finally got to safety, he just waited for more backup to arrive. However, minutes after the exchange of gunfire, that officer started to see thick, dark smoke billowing out from that area, quickly realizing that the farmhouse is now in a blaze. The authorities wouldn't push back onto the property for a while, and instead flew a drone over it and spotted 2 dead bodies and the house burning to the ground. By the time they found it safe enough to re-enter, Nedra's brother Kevin Anderson, who is suspected of the murders and arson, vanished after the incident and to this day has not been seen since. Welcome back to the dark side of life. In the summer of 2020, Nedra and James Lemke, who went by Jim, had been happily married for over 38 years and lived very fulfilling lives. They were the best of the best, is how people would often describe them. Jim and Nedra would go above and beyond for anybody who needed it, and their actions showed that time and time again. Nedra was one of 5 children, and her father, Verdal Anderson, owned a beautiful farmhouse that was located on a nice piece of land in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. That summer, her father would sadly pass away on Friday the 5th of June in 2020. Before he died, he wrote his will, and in it, he wrote that Nedra would be the personal representative of his estate. What exactly she planned to do with the house and property is unclear, but what's obvious is it did infuriate her older brother Kevin Anderson, who was known for being overly temperamental. According to the family, the will did share everything that he left equally. However, when it came to the estate and who would be the executor of his will, Nedra was chosen, and for good reason, meaning she would be in charge of carrying out her father's will as it should and ensuring that any stipulations and last wishes Verdal had would be carried out properly. After learning about this, Kevin was pissed off that his sister was named over him as the representative. He felt he should have been the one that his dad left it up to. Between the remaining family members, it sounds like they all knew that Kevin felt entitled to that property and always expected that his father would leave him in charge of the farmhouse. So when his expectation wasn't met, tension started to rise in the family. Kevin's been described as a loner who drank heavily and worked mostly odd jobs throughout his life. Along with having a violent temper, Kevin also had a criminal history that dated back over 20 years. In the 90s, he had been convicted of reckless endangerment and firearms violations, apparently stemming from a situation that happened outside of a bar when Kevin and one of his friends walked there and started breaking into cars in the parking lot. When one of those car owners came outside and saw the duo, Kevin, brandishing a handgun, opened fire on them, forcing them to take cover, leading to this felony conviction and him not being allowed to own any firearms, which we know he would not comply with by later investigations. After the family had a service for Verdal, Nedra knew that she needed to get things in order at her late father's house. The bulk of the following information comes from an article that was posted covering the episode of In Pursuit with John Walsh, where he went to Fort Atkinson and closely investigated the story. I will leave the link to those articles in the description. 11 days after her father passed away on the morning of June 16th, Jim and Nedra woke up early that morning and were planning on taking care of some things at the farm later on that day. One of the things on that list was finding someone to take care of the lawn before the grass got out of control. At 9:33 a.m. that morning, Nedra would send out a text message to 3 contacts in her phone, one of them being Kevin, but I'm not sure who the other 2 recipients were. The text message that she sent read, "Hi everyone, just wanted to put this out to see if anyone wants to take up the task of keeping the farm's grass mowed this summer. It is getting long." Kevin did not respond to this message, but investigators say that he did receive the text. Roughly 3 hours later, at 12:41 p.m., Nedra made an outgoing call to Kevin's phone that lasted under 60 seconds, leaving a voicemail that said, "Hi Kevin, this is Nedra. Say, I have some plans to get the mowing done at the farm, and so I need access into the shed to get the mower. If you could call me back and let me know, we're planning on doing that tonight, so that would be really helpful. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye." To my knowledge, this is the last time that Nedra would try calling or texting Kevin that day. 5 hours later, Nedra, Jim, and another one of Nedra's brothers named Kirk headed to the farmhouse. Jim and Nedra were riding in the front, Kirk is riding in the back seat, and Kirk is nonverbal due to mental and physical limitations he has. After they arrived at the property to get started, Jim and Nedra hopped out of the vehicle, and Kirk remained in the back seat for the time being. Almost immediately, Nedra starts to notice there's some broken windows on the house, and she is positive that she locked it up the previous night, and knows that someone must have broke in. Not wanting to enter the house without law enforcement, she pulls her phone out and makes that 911 call at exactly 5:48 p.m.
There's windows broken out and windows open, and we had locked the house down. So to have someone come look at this before I walk into the house.
Yeah, please don't go in because we don't know if someone's still in there.
12 minutes after this call was received, the first responding officer arrived on scene and started making his way westbound down their driveway, and eventually saw Nedra on the ground. Initially, he wasn't sure if she was conscious or not, so he tries talking to her, addressing her a few times, but said he got no reaction and there was no movement from her. Moments later, he saw a trail of blood that was on the ground next to her, and he realizes she must have sustained a gunshot wound. The officer draws his gun and moves to the back side of his squad car. As he is standing there relaying information to dispatch, Kevin opens fire on the unsuspecting officer. This officer, who apparently requested to remain anonymous, he said that he could see some of the bullet holes above his head that struck his car. Based on the position, he figured out that the shooter was in an elevated position looking down at him.
$5.95. Shots fired at the residence! Shots fired! Shots fired! .595, return fire, upper window. .595, I have a female laying down next to the vehicle, one male in the back not involved.
Subsequent to this officer diving into the ditch, he would stay prone and watch over the road with his gun drawn for a bit, before crawling back towards his other officers while radioing in information. Then he started to see thick and dark smoke start billowing out from the farmhouse. Because the authorities had no idea where the shooter was, what he was doing, or what he planned to do, they made the decision to not send anybody else back onto the property for the time being, until they put a drone in the air and got a better look at the house and its surroundings to understand what was going on before re-entering, saying that their main priority was safety and they didn't want anybody else to get hurt. After flying the drone over their property, they were able to locate the body of 57-year-old Nedra, and not far away from her was the body of 59-year-old Jim. The couple was gunned down before officers even made it to the property, and unfortunately they would be pronounced dead on the scene. When authorities finally found it safe enough to go back onto the property, The farmhouse had basically burned to the ground. There wasn't much of it left, and investigators found Kevin Anderson's truck concealed in the barn, so they are certain that he was there, but he didn't die in the fire. They only found the remains of Jim and Nedra on the property. Her brother Kirk was still in the backseat of the vehicle. He was unharmed, but probably traumatized by what just unfolded. With the knowledge that Kevin just murdered 2 innocent people and is now running free, they threw together a search team and started to comb through the debris of the fire, as well as the large amount of land and marsh area that is surrounding the farmhouse. There was said to be over 80 acres of this property, which Kevin was very familiar with, an area he had spent countless hours in. The police department used a vast amount of resources trying to locate him, including airplanes, drones, canines, cadaver dogs, and trekking a lot of it on foot looking for Kevin, searching tirelessly day after day in hopes that he hadn't made it that far yet. Unfortunately, he never emerged, and he still hasn't. There was only one dog who hit on a scent, and then he followed that track back into a marshland where eventually he lost track of it. There haven't been any credible sightings of him since, meaning he has successfully evaded law enforcement for over 3 years now. He is described as being 6 feet tall, weighing around 200 pounds, with balding brown hair. Kevin does have a wife who says she hasn't seen him since the night before the shooting when they said goodnight to one another. When she woke up the next morning, he was gone, saying that wasn't unusual though, as he normally got up and left early for work. Although she was aware that Kevin was infuriated that he hadn't been given the farmhouse, he had apparently expressed some of his anger about the situation to his wife. Authorities believe because he got that text message about mowing the grass, he knew that Jim and Nedra would be showing up to the property at some point that day. Knowing this, he decided to conceal his truck in the barn and then lay in wait for the couple to arrive with intentions of murdering them when they did. Jim and Nedra's daughter, Amanda Waterworth, spoke with Investigative Discovery and said she knows this was out of spite, saying, quote, "I feel like him burning down the house definitely was a revenge move, whether it was my parents for something or whether it was my grandparents for what he felt he had been wronged with. One of my biggest fears is that he will hurt somebody else." According to those who know him, Kevin is an experienced outdoorsman who is more than capable of living off the grid and surviving. He was an avid hunter and what many would consider a skilled marksman, spending a lot of time in that area and the outdoors of Wisconsin. He has the knowledge, skill set, and motive to be extremely dangerous to society. Even though Kevin wasn't supposed to own firearms, we know that he had access to many of them, and he most likely will not be caught without one. The ATF has offered a $10,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of Kevin Anderson, and anyone who sees this man is urged not to approach him and instead call law enforcement. They've had a number of tips come in, some with similarities. However, none of them have led investigators to the Kevin Anderson, who at this point would be in his mid-60s. A warrant for his arrest has been issued, along with several charges, including 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 1 count of attempted first-degree intentional homicide, 1 count of arson of a building, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. Hopefully, he is caught and brought into custody so justice can be served for Jim and Nedra Lemke, who were simply following the wishes of her late father. There's a reason that Verdal relied on his daughter to get it done and do it right, and that's because her and Jim were the most responsible. Before Verdal and his wife passed away, Jim and Nedra would look after them, doing a lot of their paperwork, such as finances and healthcare, proving time and time again that they were dependable. No matter what was going on in their life, they got the important stuff done. So it's no wonder that Verdal leaned on his daughter, who had already consistently been there for him. Like I mentioned, Jim and Nedra were described as being the best of the best, the real deal. And the way they lived their lives and the amount of people they impacted is really inspiring. Their loved ones never want them to be forgotten. Sometimes when you hear stories like this, you hear, "This was the best person ever," and you wonder if that's really true, but in this case, it is what John Ackett had to say about Jim and Nedra, and he was the couple's pastor at the Faith Community Church, which they had been attending since 1991. He knew Jim and Nedra personally for decades and witnessed the impact they made everywhere they went. They were truly dedicated to their faith and spreading the love through positive action. According to John, Jim and Nedra had been teaching Sunday school to the middle schoolers, along with working in the church's youth ministry program for over 20 years, going on a number of mission trips around the world, making a worldwide difference with their generosity and love. I will often see the efforts that family members and loved ones take to keep someone's memory alive following their death. I must say the dedication that Jim and Nedra's family members have to making sure they are never forgotten is absolutely stunning. After they passed, the Lemke Legacy 5K was created in honor of the couple, where people can sign up and compete in the race as a way to remember them and pass on a part of their memory. Jim and Nedra were both avid runners. However, Jim would compete in and finish some insane races. He would partake in many races, including the Boston Marathon, but this next one is what blew me away. He was one of the few finishers of the 2016 Gnarly Bandit series, which is a series of 5 ultra-marathon trail races consisting of 4 different 100-mile races plus another 100K, which is the last race being just over 60 miles long. I had to look into this, and he was one of 3 people to successfully complete this task in the year 2016. That is utterly impressive. There's no denying that Jim and Nedra were 2 incredible individuals who made an even greater team together. Nedra was the great woman behind the great man, is something that I read several times while learning about them. Realistically, I could make this video another hour covering the true impact they had on the world. Just genuine, warm-hearted, giving people that were the ultimate role models. It's always tragic to see the best people the world has to offer get taken in such a violent way over a decision that ultimately wasn't theirs. They were just being the dependable couple that they've always been. This world was blessed to see 2 people as beautiful and as caring as Jim and Nedra Lemke, who passed away on June 16th, 2020. May they rest in peace. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you made it to the end, go down to the comment section and comment role models so I know. And if you want to, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Clausen with 2 N's. If you have a story suggestion, DM me on there. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I truly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.